You always wait. You wait for the phone call from your partner, the text from a friend, the counselor's time, maybe even your parents' voice to calm you. But what if I told you that waiting is costing you your power? That you are the single most reliable person you'll ever have to calm you down. And until you claim that, you'll keep showing up in your relationships kind of needy, maybe, definitely reactive, and certainly out of sorts. Today, we're going to uncover why you habitually reach for someone else first to feel better, how that pattern affects the one relationship you can't escape, yes, the one with yourself. And most importantly, I'll give you 5 research-backed self-soothing tools you can start using right now so you don't have to wait for any kind of rescue. So stay tuned. Hello again. You know who it is. It's me, Dr. Abby Medcalf. And today's episode came from a conversation that was happening on my Substack. One of the members reached out asking about this, and I thought it was a great topic. And just before I jump in, if you haven't listened yet to Workplace Therapy with Dr. Abby Medcalf, it's my newer podcast. I just started. This is it. We're in our 8th season here. Relationships Made Easy, but that podcast I just started in October of 2025. I'm really proud, and it's much shorter than this one. It's just quick tips for work. So if you have a job or know someone with a job, please start checking it. Please start checking it out. It's anywhere you download this. You can find it on my website or anywhere you download any podcast, you'll find it. All right, let's get to it. So let's talk first about why you reach out for assurance or validation first. Why do you do that? There are 3, I'm sure there's many reasons, but I think there's 3 main reasons why you reach out before you reach inward. And there's certainly an overlap between them. And what I think those categories are it's like an overlap between your attachment history, validation seeking behavior, and some emotional regulation, I'll say shortcuts that you're taking. So let me break those 3 down. So let's talk about attachment and the urge to reach out. And I've talked a lot about attachment on the podcast before, insecure and secure attachment. I will link to those previous episodes in the show notes. You can find on the website, or you can find all the links below the video if you're watching on YouTube. So the research shows that people with anxious attachment are more likely to use sort of reassurance-seeking behaviors when they get distressed in any way. So if you have this kind of attachment style, this insecure attachment style, your internal working models tell you that if someone else doesn't step in, that you're not safe. That instinct to call someone, it really comes from a place that says, and you'll probably relate to this, I'll only feel okay if someone else gives me the signal. It generally means that in your early years, your nervous system learned to rely on someone else to soothe you. You didn't learn how to soothe yourself, okay? So that's where that comes from. That's one of the reasons why something goes on, your immediate reaction is to call a friend or to call someone, and not sit with it even for a second. The second main reason I see is your, what am I going to call it? Like validation and external signals. So beyond attachment, beyond that, you could also be wired for external validation. You've learned probably unconsciously that your worth is tied to someone else saying, yes, you're okay. That's something called, we psychologists would call that your approval-seeking schema. Okay, that's that in action. And what's a schema? A schema is basically like a mental framework that helps you organize information. Okay, we all have a schema. Everybody's got schemas. And it's like, I think of it like your brain's file folder system. So information comes in and it thinks about how to file it, how to think about it. Okay, that's your schema. Your way. Maybe you could call it. It's more than just your point of view, because it's, again, how your brain processes the information and where it kind of puts it. It's like your filter for the world. So if you have an approval-seeking schema or filter, It means um, that's one of the ways your brain filters and sorts information. I guess that's the best way to say that. So when you feel unsafe, like if you feel in trouble or something's upsetting you, that means you feel unsafe. You look outward for that signal. Tell me I'm okay. Tell me I'm safe. Let me know. Now, it's not inherently, bad to think this way. I mean, right? We're humans. We're relational. That's our thing. But when that becomes your first and only move, you give away your emotional power. You give away your sense of agency, and that affects your self-esteem and all kinds of other stuff. So it's not like you would. And I want to be clear about today. I reach out for help. I reach out to other people. Of course, we all do. That's fine. It's when it's the only kind of arrow in your quiver. It's when it's the only thing you'll do and the only thing that'll make you feel better. That's where hopefully you're listening and trying to improve on this. And the third main reason, besides those two, is really what I would call your emotion regulation gap. I think that's a good way to say that. This is kind of the third piece of why you reach out for validation first. Your nervous system is built to regulate, but if you haven't practiced self-regulation, self-soothing, if you haven't practiced that much, the easiest path forward becomes someone else fix this so I don't feel bad. Okay, that's what happens. And there's a lot of research on self-regulation showing that adults who regulate emotion themselves, rather than always relying on external calming, have really healthier outcomes overall from, everything: physical health, mental health, spiritual health, relationships. It's kind of incredible. So, and you know me, I always link to the research and on the website, on the blog, in the show notes, and also below the video. So if you want to look all the research up for yourself, if you don't believe me, which is fine, I give you everything. I don't give you everything. I have to tell you, I read a lot. I do a lot of research for every episode. I'm not going to list 12 links that I looked at. I try to take like what I think is the best article or the one that maybe has, and you can go dig on your own after that. But it would be overwhelming for anyone to have 70 links below the video. And instead I try to keep it short. All right. So what am I saying with these three? I'm saying that you reach out first because it's been what works. And I hope that your insight today is that it works temporarily and externally. What you're about to do, what I want to do with you, is build internal work that changes the equation completely, that will have longer term, healthier effects. Because there's really a deeper cost of what it's doing to you. This is obviously you if you're sitting here with me. You call someone when you're upset. You wait for reassurance, for comfort or connection, so you can feel kind of back to baseline. But again, the cost is real to you, and it's chronic. And there's, again, actually, I think there's probably three main ways as I'm sitting here. There's a lot of threes today. There's three main ways it's impacting you in a negative way. One is your nervous system. When you leave your emotional regulation to someone else, your autonomic nervous system will remain in a kind of waiting for rescue mode. So you're going to stay in an elevated arousal state. So it's a more anxious state, a hyper arousal state. You're going to have a higher heart rate, faster breathing, which means less capacity to think clearly. There's studies on self-soothing behaviors that show this, like, over and over. It's terrible. Can you imagine being in this hypervigilant state all the time? You don't realize this cost, that it's there all the time, not just when something happens and you're like, oh, I got to call somebody. This is there all the time. This is a low level. I know. And well, let me say this. I don't think I defined self-soothing behaviors, did I? Most of the studies define self-soothing behaviors as a process of internal or intrinsic self-directed efforts to calm yourself, to calm distress, to return to baseline. Okay, that's the best way. I actually think I said that kind of well. If you skip that step repeatedly, you remain in a state of dysregulation all the time, not just when something bad happens. Yes, I want you to be really clear on this. So ulcers, headaches, gastrointestinal issues. I mean, there's a lot of stuff physically that gets anxiety, depression. I mean, there's so much impact. Having a shorter fuse, lower stress tolerance. It goes on and on, on and on. So it really is something to address. All right. The second, I'm going to give you a few reasons why it's giving you trouble. The second reason is the impact it has on your relationships. I read a study when I was, researching this that found that people who engage in excessive reassurance-seeking behaviors, and I'm going to say excessive, like all of us seek reassurance sometimes, but when it's excessive, meaning every single time, pretty much, they found that people that engage in those kinds of excessive reassurance-seeking behaviors they ended up with negative effects on partner trust the next day and the next week. Yeah. So if you're always, hey, are you there? Do you still care? I got to ask, if you're always doing that, help me calm down. It becomes, of course, less about connection and more about an emotional lifeline, which puts a lot of pressure on you and on the other person. And that erodes relationship trust. Again, when it happens often. Not if, of course, we all look to our partners for some reassurance or whatever, or we all look to our best friend for that. But when you do that, again, excessively, you are eroding trust in that relationship. And I'll link to that study. I thought it was a really good one. And it was a large study. And I saw other studies show that insecure attachment, which fuels this pattern, what I just talked about, correlates with poorer psychological well-being, worse relational satisfaction. So the pattern isn't just kind of annoying, it's relationally and personally costly to you. Okay. And then the third thing is that it's a cost to your relationship with yourself, to your sense of self-efficacy, your sense of agency. When you're constantly turning outward for calm, you're sending a message internally, I can't trust myself to bring myself to safety. And that, of course, erodes your self-confidence and your feelings of self-worth. You become someone who needs external validation just to feel okay. And that's obviously not the position you want to be in, right? Doesn't take, Freud to say that. So the costs might seem invisible, but they're very real. You have strain on your nervous system. You're going to have friction in your relationships and your self-trust breaks down. Okay. So And now the good news is you can do something about that, which obviously is what we're going to talk about today. But what I always strive to do in every episode of this podcast is have you understand why you want to do the tips I'm going to give you, right? I always give you tips. But if you don't really feel like there's a cost, something that you're paying, then you're not going to think there's value in a tip, right? And then you're not motivated to do them. So that is why I always try to paint the bigger kind of psychological picture. I try to give you all the research so that you really understand. You can go on TikTok or somewhere else and get a 30, I could have just had a video on 5 self-soothing tools you can start today or whatever. But if you don't understand why you should be doing it, like if it just seems like, it's kind of a good idea. All right, well, then you're not going to really do it. But I'm telling you, you are really hurting yourself. You're hurting your relationships. You're hurting yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, all the ways. So you can, and from the research, I'm not making this up. I'm not saying it anecdotally. I'm saying like, we know this is true. It's evidence-based. So I'm hoping it means that as I give you these 5 tools I'm about to give you, that you will really pay attention and start practicing them. Because I'm going to say this, learning to self-soothe is a skill. It's a skill. And like any skill, it takes practice. It takes consistency to get good at it. And you can start with these 5 tools. Like this is where I would start. You want to use them. You want to practice them. You want to build the muscle here so you don't always reach outward when you're upset or feeling, funky in some way. I should say, okay. So just a quick note. So I'm about to give you these 5 amazing tools, but the free download for today's episode is a self-soothing toolkit. I'm calling it, I'm trying to remember what I called it. It's like your calm is in your hands. 5 ways to self-soothe, something like that. So you can also get the free download, and you get those on my website and or under the video if you're watching on YouTube. And as always, I like to be very transparent. Anytime you download anything from me, you will be put on my Love Bites, my love letter list, which is a twice a month, second and fourth Wednesday of the month, you will get an email from me that is my love letter. It's just that's all it is. There's nothing else. It's a story. It's something to help you, motivate you for the week to think differently about your life. Maybe a tool, a story. It's a 5-10 minute read. You can certainly unsubscribe if you like, but there's tens of thousands of people on there who really like it. And that list is growing all the time because I do it out of love. I'm not selling you anything. I know that sounds so strange these days. I'm really not. You can just get this for free because I love you and I'm trying to help heal the world. And so that's all it is. Try it out. See if you like it. If you don't, unsubscribe. All right. But I like to be transparent. And obviously I don't give your information to anybody else. Does anybody do that anymore? It's so crappy. Okay. So tool number 1. Tool number 1 is for self-soothing is to use sense anchors. Okay. Your senses, touch, smell, sound, taste, sight. Is that all of them? So let's talk about it. So when you engage your senses intentionally, again, touch, smell, sound, taste, sight, okay, you shift the pathway of your distress from kind of that swirling emotional loop into the more kind of stabilizing territory of your body and the environment. So, in other words, rather than staying like kind of trapped in I feel out of control mode, when you engage your senses, it invites you differently. Look, feel, hear, taste. When you invite them to smell something, that's what it's going to do is anchor you in the here and now. And again, there's a lot of good research on this. There's a lot of clinical literature that says that these are called like grounding techniques. That any grounding technique that engages your sensory input, one of those 5 senses, it really will help people who are dissociating, who are overwhelmed by memories, who are stuck in emotional reactivity. It'll help you get out of that, become aware of the here and now. Okay? They're incredibly effective. There's studies using physical and sensory-based grounding interventions. So, movement, awareness of body contact, tactile stimulation, things like that. They show measurable reductions in anxiety, in depression. They show improved emotional regulation, improved regulation of your emotional arousal, and they do this, of course, in comparison to control groups. That's how that all works. You don't have to wait to feel calm. You can activate calm by pulling your nervous system into sensory contact with what's under your feet, what's against your skin, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can see right now. So let's say and this is to me the very first thing you should do when you're upset, that before you reach for the phone, before you, text someone, before you do anything else. Let me think of a good example. Let's say you had a tense conversation with your teenager. I'm thinking of a client I had earlier today. You leave the room for 90 seconds, okay? 90 seconds, a minute and a half. And you could do something with touch. You could wrap your favorite blanket around yourself. You could inhale the scent of your favorite essential oil. You could take a Some sips of herbal tea. That would be taste and smell, right? Because you kind of smell it and you can taste it. Look at a photo of a place you love, right? Use your visual. Play a 90-second track of a song you saved. Okay? There's a sound. All of it for reset. All of this will reset you. You're telling yourself, like, body, I know you're rattled. I'm anchoring you. Breathe, tea, calm, whatever, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Very effective. And it doesn't have to be complicated at all. Tool number 2. This is the second tool is like breath and voice activation together. So slow, controlled breathing combined with gentle humming, right? Vocal humming or tones. The research shows it engages your body's internal regulation system in 2 really powerful ways. First, any kind of prolonged paced exhales, which I've talked about a gazillion times here on the podcast. I have another episode I'll link to about breathing, all the different ways you could breathe. But any kind of prolonged paced, again, it's all about the exhale, stimulates your vagus nerve, which is a major part of your parasympathetic nervous system or your rest and digest nervous system. And there's a lot of research showing that how regulated respiration, that's what we would call that, like a regulated respiration, it will phasically and tonically stimulate that vagus nerve, okay? And it'll shift the autonomic nervous system, or automatic balance towards calm, okay? We know this. Now, second, humming or like a gentle vocalization creates this vibratory feedback in the throat and chest. And we think about even oming, if you om in a certain way. And that also supports that vagus nerve activation. So for this, I was looking and I found a study. So I've been talking about humming for years. It really helps. But then of course I go look, I'm like, well, where's the research on that? I know I've been saying this. I know I've read the research at some point, so I went back and I found this one study that showing how, and I'll link to it, showing how humming significantly lowered the stress index and improved HRV, which is heart rate variability, which is the biggie. Like humming, they compared it to like a physical activity or a stress condition. Like, those were the 3. And it was incredible, like just humming. I know, like incredibly useful and calming to the body. So let's say you are waiting for a tough phone call or maybe you just walked away from a really charged conversation and you know how maybe your chest is tight, your mind is racing, and your impulse is, okay, I need to talk to somebody. Like, I'm going to make a call. I got to talk to somebody. So instead, I want you to sit upright in a comfortable chair with your feet on the ground. So not laying down. You want to sit up for this because you want your feet on the ground. You would inhale through your nose, let's say for 4 counts. Okay. Breathe in for 4 and watch your belly expand. Make sure one of the best things you can do is put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and make sure only the hand on your belly is moving. You do not want to inhale into your chest. Those are not the kind of breaths we're looking for. So when you inhale, your stomach will go out. That's what happens. And when you exhale, your stomach will constrict. It'll come in. So you'd inhale through your nose for 4 counts and, noticing your belly expanding. And then exhale slowly through your mouth, or you could do it even through your nose for say 6 to 8 counts while humming. So breathing, but with an exhale with a hum. Right? Until that exhale ends. And let it go. And then you repeat that 4 to 6 times. Just so that's right. And again, we're talking about like a minute of your time. I want to really emphasize. Sometimes people say, I don't have time to do this stuff, Abby. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have time? I'm talking about seconds. Sometimes you have to step away from the desk. Sometimes you have to tell someone, oh, give me 1 second. Just even if you're on the phone or something, you say, oh, give me 1 second. A Zoom call. Oh, give me 1 second. They don't have to know what you're doing. And it's literally going to be like a second. It's not 1 second, but it's very quick. You can interrupt any conversation to do this. So let's say you repeat it like 4 to 6 times. Nice inhale for 4, exhaling with the hum. And after the last one, maybe say something to yourself. That I would say it out loud, but you could say it in your head. I've got you. You're safe. I'm here for you. All is well. All is well is one of my favorites, right? So you're gonna, right? It's so you're gonna breathe in. You're gonna feel your belly expand. Now you're gonna hum on the out breath. One more time, and then out. Right? You're slowing down. You're here. I'm here. I've got you, kind of things. Those are your internal dialogue. Okay. Again, super helpful from the research, not something that Abby made up in the shower. Okay. This is the stuff that helps for self-soothing. The third tool I would tell you is great for self-soothing is the name the feeling and frame it. Okay. Tool, let's say. So just by putting your experience into words, I feel X, right? I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed. I feel sad. I feel abandoned. I feel whatever. Or, oh my gosh, my heart is racing. Just to come into that, oh, my heart is racing. My chest feels really tight. That activates a regular, it's a regulatory process in your brain called affect labeling. Okay. That's what that's called. Affect labeling. And I talk a lot about affect labeling. I don't always use that term, but having your feeling, right? Not I'm anxious, but I'm feeling anxious. My heart is racing, right? Like you're not saying you are something, right? And studies show over and over that when we name our feelings, activity in the amygdala, right? Your brain's fear alarm center goes down, and activity in your ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, if you want to get really specific, but I usually just say in your prefrontal cortex, but in your ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, and that's the region linked to regulation and choice and all that good stuff. That goes up. Activity there goes up while your amygdala, the fear part, goes down. So you move from reactive, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? You move from that mode to a more reflective, oh, what am I feeling and what am I about to do kind of mode, right? Do you see how you go from urgency to slow? You go from, this impulsivity to choice and calm. That is how it's really incredible. I saw, I read this one study. It was a neuroimaging study showing that affect labeling, again, I feel whatever, again, simply naming the emotion that popped up in a stressful image reduced distress. It reduced self-reported distress, okay, but also dampened, they could see it, neural response in the amygdala. And I found another study showing that affect labeling was more effective than kind of passive watching in lowering your emotional reactivity. I mean, I actually got really lost in the sauce with some of these because there was just so much research about it. There's so much good research about it. Again, I'll link to some of it, but wow. So let's say, I always want to give you a real world example. Let's say you've been, I'm thinking of my clients. Oh, here's one. This was from a couple weeks ago, but I have a client who was, let's say you've just been passed over for a project at work and you're feeling that sting of rejection. You've got some anger, you're feeling rejection, some resentment maybe. So rather than immediately picking up your phone to talk it out, right, to call someone, to complain, to, bitch and moan, you pause. You think or you whisper to yourself, okay, I feel disappointed. I feel invisible. My chest is tight. My mind is racing about fairness. Do you see that? Then you can add a frame. It may, and I call this normalizing. Well, it makes sense I feel this because I cared about the chance, I cared about this project. I cared about having this opportunity because and it touched my sense of worth at my job. And my sense of being expert at my job. But, I've got time. I can choose what to do with this. And then you can ask yourself, what do I need right now to bring myself back to baseline? Again, maybe it's a 2-minute walk. Maybe it's jotting a sentence. Maybe it's one of the self-contact moves I'm going to give you, right? I don't know, but that's, you have to think about, I feel disappointed. I feel unseen. That makes sense. So what move will serve me now? That's really where you're going. And again, if you notice, we get out of the impulsivity, we get out of the impatience, we get out of the urgency with all of these tools, and we get to thoughtful decision making. We get to choice. We get to agency. We get to feeling empowered. Do you see the difference? When you make those calls too quickly or every single time, you feel needy. I know you do. That's why you're listening right now. It doesn't feel good. You feel out of control. You feel like you can't take care of yourself. You feel a lot of things. And that sucks. So, that's what we're looking to change today, right? That's what we're coming out of. All right. Tool number 4 is self-contact. And this, again, really, really helpful. When you place your hand on your heart or on your belly or another, what we call a safe body part, because anybody who has any kind of history of any kind of abuse, you have body parts that aren't safe to touch. You already know, even for your own touch often, or it just brings up a bad feeling. So we want, you want to be thoughtful about this. And this might not be for you if you've had a lot of physical abuse or sexual abuse, this particular tool. But if you have a safe place on your body to contact, place your hand on your heart or your belly or, again, somewhere else, you activate soothing touch signals that bring your nervous system into a calmer state. Touch is huge. And we know that it's not just other people touching us, it's us touching us. So, and there's, again, I read a bunch of studies showing that self-soothing touch or physical contact reduces cortisol. That's one of the stress hormones. When you're in response to a stressor, just so if there's a stressor, cortisol gets released, and this is and adrenaline and things like that. And these particular hormones are reduced when people have a safe body part that they're touching. And it activates the neural pathways connected with affect regulation. So I know it's incredible. Like everything, again, this was another one that there were so many studies about it. I read another review on, they call it affective touch, is with an A, affective touch. Most of the studies, most of the reviews I read showed that any kind of touch like that, it plays really a key role in your self-regulatory processes. Again, especially when if other people aren't available or if you're just not using them. So let's say you finished a heated exchange with a loved one and, your chest is tight, your mind is buzzing with, I should have said this, or why didn't I say that? Or why did I say that? Or whatever. So instead of picking up your phone to call someone, look for reassurance, right away, you're going to pause, sit, stand, I don't care, but place a hand gently. I use my heart a lot. But if you want to put it over your belly, if that feels more grounding, you can do that. You can put both hands on the top of your thighs. That's another really good place. You could do a cross-body hug onto your shoulders, put your hands there. However it feels good to you. I tend to use sometimes 2 hands on my heart or 1 hand on my heart. But close your eyes for a moment. Again, inhale 4 counts, exhale 6 counts. And maybe on the exhale, you would think, I'm here for you. Breathe again. On the exhale, I've got you. You're safe. All of those things, so good. So good. The message is I'm safe and I've got you, meaning you to you, right? Really good. And if you, again, all these tools I'm giving you, so quick to do, so easy to do. You don't need to spend money. You don't need to do anything else. But it will help you self-soothe, because in these really biological ways that will shift your brain chemistry. It really shift more than just your brain chemistry. It's shifting your hormones also in your body, not just the neurotransmitters in your brain. And you will be in a self-soothing mode. And that's really what we're looking for. It doesn't mean you can't call someone later. It doesn't mean you can't reach out. It means, again, that that's not your only option. It's not the only tool you have in your toolbox. Okay. Tool number 5 is, I call this one like a mini ritual and habit building. So, let me have a sip of water. Hold on. Okay. So establishing some sort of short, structured ritual really creates a bridge between the stressed state that you're in and the calmer state that you want. Okay. And there's, again, a lot of research showing that rituals are defined as repetitive, meaningful sequences of action. Okay. That rituals have measurable regulatory functions for emotion. That they show it all over and over. They help you feel you're doing something purposeful. They give your nervous system a predictable cue. We're shifting now. Hello. And they anchor your internal state in the present, rather than that swirl of reactive kind of chaos that you had. I read this one study showing that people who performed just like a simple ritual after they kind of had some form of anxiety, that they had lower, again, self-reported and physiological anxiety. I mean, it went on and on. Like, study after study showing this kind of stuff. So let me give you an example here. So let's say you're finished your workday, but your brain is still buzzing, right? You're finished, you're driving home or walking or whatever, but your brain is buzzing, your body feels tight, you feel sort of agitated. Instead of allowing the kind of off switch to be maybe some kind of default chaos, I want you to pause for, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes. Just 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Yeah, stand, stretch your shoulders, get back, like maybe place your favorite scarf or blanket around you, right? So like a sensory cue on top of the ritual. Got to say to yourself, I'm shifting out of work mode and into human mode, something like that. Activate a sensory anchor, lighting a candle, playing a short 90-second calming sound clip. I have a client who listens to the same music, this one song, when he drives home every single day. Sort of a cue. Take a breath. Again, inhale 4 counts, exhale 6 while your hand is on your belly or your heart. Think, right now I feel whatever, and I choose something else, right? Right now I feel anxious and I choose ease, right? And then move on to your evening. But you have this message that you've oriented yourself, that you're there for yourself, right? It's like you got to think of a way that you would have a little ritual that you do every day. And it's sort of like, how you have rituals to go to sleep, because it helps your brain understand, like, oh, we do this and then we do this and then we do this and then we go to sleep. Like, it knows once it's in that kind of, anybody listening has a kid, you do it with your children all the time. Oh, we take a bath and then we read a book and then we get into bed, whatever it is, right? And if you do it the same way time after time, first of all, you get less pushback, right? And if you always do it that way, and second of all, your kids will fall asleep faster because it's just how they know. Well, you do the same thing to orient yourself back to calm, where you have a little thing. I've talked before about how I tend to use, I will drive my car home, but before I pull in the driveway, I would park down the street from my house and I would sit in the car. I wouldn't even put the car in park. I got to tell you that's how quick this was. I would leave my foot on the brake and I would just take a moment and I would do a couple deep breaths and then I would close my eyes and I pictured myself, I picture this huge big metal door closing on the day, on my office on the day. And I could sometimes see like clients and people, wanting things, trying to sneak around the door, trying to keep the door open. And I was just gently pushing it closed, not slamming it. I had a big smile on my face and like, no, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Got to go now. And closing that door and then really making this sort of mental break with closing the door on my day. Now, a lot of people use something external to self-soothe now, maybe a drink or smoking pot or having something to eat. I try not to use something external to self-soothe. I try to use internal things to self-soothe because the externals don't really have long-term effects, as you well know. That's why you have to keep doing it. And that's why the energy keeps coming back. So, if you have a drink, after that drink wears off, you're going to start thinking about whatever was bothering you earlier, it's going to come back. So if that's instead, you want to use yourself. And that way, if I was home and I started to maybe think of a client or something or work, I could, again, sort of picture that door closing. And I have to tell you, it was so easy to conjure the image after a while. And these days it's super easy. And I'll even tell you that these days it happens almost automatically. I don't even really have to think so much about it anymore because I've been doing it for so many years that now the kids are out of the house. I sometimes just get all the way home, but I always stop my car and, after I turn off my car in the driveway these days, before I walk in the house, I just take a minute to reorient myself, to calm. When I get home, another thing I do to sort of self-soothe, to bring myself to state is when I first get home, if we're not going anywhere at night, the first thing I do is I change my clothes out of my work clothes because I wear very nice clothes to work and I don't want to cook dinner in these clothes. I change my clothing into, jeans and a t-shirt or something, more just something I don't care if it gets splattered with something. And then that's when I wash my face. I take off my makeup. I do all that. And I did this all during my kids' years. Before I would say hi to everybody. I'd give everyone a kiss. I'm like, Mom will be right back. And everybody knew to leave me alone for 15 minutes because it doesn't take that long to wash your face and put on my little lotions and things for my skin. It doesn't take long. Take off my makeup. It just doesn't take long. But those few minutes to change my clothes, to have quiet in the house, even the dog was not allowed in my bedroom when this was happening, go in the bathroom, take off my makeup. That also ensured that I did all, women, when you try to take off your makeup right before bed, what happens? You know what I'm talking. Yes, you go to sleep with your makeup on because it's exhausting. It's so tiring to do that so late. Even all the putting on your lotions and potions and skincare routine, there's no reason you can't do that at 6 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. It's fine. It's fine. You really can. So that's when I did all that. So not only am I just helping myself and nourishing myself, but it's that time to kind of shift. And it's very soothing. It's very calming to take off your makeup and change your clothes, listen to some music or whatever, and have that little moment. And I try to, it's a lot of very kind of sensory, right? The smells of the lotions and washing my face, touching myself in those ways, giving myself a hug, whatever. It's a nice feeling. So I'm just really want to speak highly to these self-soothing things that you can put into your schedule in different ways. And there's a lot of things that change when you own your calm. To me, there's three main sort of outcomes my clients report when they start owning their calm and stop just looking outside of themselves for calm. Again, be that a person, picking up the phone, looking for someone else to soothe us or something else to soothe us. The biggest shift, of course, is with yourself. You become your own kind of first responder, right? So instead of the usual, panic, call, scramble, whatever, you get to pause, choose, act, right? Very different. Your nervous system becomes, of course, less reactive. You become more grounded. Your internal voice becomes stronger. You're really building self-trust because you see it. You see, I can handle this. You don't need perfect. You just need practice. All right. That's it. The second shift you see is that with others, you show up calmer. When you're less reactive, you're more present. You're less, I need you to soothe me, and more, here I am, whole and available. And that changes everything. Your partner, your friend, your mom isn't your regulator. They're your companion. They're your mom. They're your whoever. And that really grows true intimacy. By intimacy, I mean emotional closeness. It grows respect. There's healthier dynamics. I mean, it's everything. And the third big change you're going to see is in your relationships. When you regulate yourself, you're going to bring, it's like a steadiness. You create boundaries from clarity. There's no more fear. It's like clarity, calm, love. You give less emotional freight to other people. You show up from your highest self, not your reactive self. And that shifts, of course, how people respond to you and how you feel about yourself, right? That's how it is. So you need to create some sort of, for yourself, from everything I've said, like a mini self-soothe protocol. Okay, that's what you want, like at the ready. You want it right there. So actually, let's just do it right now. Here's like a script you can run before you pick up the phone. Okay. 1, ground, stop, feet planted, inhale 4 counts, exhale 6 counts, right? Then do a sense check. Choose one sensory anchor, blanket, scent, song, use it, right? Name and frame. I feel X. It makes sense because Y, right? Do that. There you go. And then breathe and voice, right? Inhale and exhale with a hum. Do that 3 times. Then some kind of self-contact, hand on heart, hand on belly. Just press down so gently. I'm here for you. Do another breathing cycle. And choose your next step. Then ask, do I call someone now, or do I take 2 more minutes for me and then decide? Whatever it is, then act. But even if you call someone at this point, you have been there for yourself first. And that is the most important part. Okay. So I will wrap up by saying this. You don't have to keep waiting for someone else to calm you down. And I don't want you to. You can train yourself to be your own calm. That doesn't mean you'll never need someone else. I'm not talking about that. It means you won't depend on someone else as your only path. I want you to step into all of your relationships from strength, not from need, right? I want you to show up whole, not fragmented by like this seeking, grasping behavior. Right? But you're going to have to, use the tools. I just gave you 5. You're going to have to practice them. You have to build that muscle, right? That calm you're waiting for, it's inside you. All right? It's inside you. For sure, pick up the free giveaway for today, the free download. Your calm is in your hands, right? These 5 ways to self-soothe. You can pick those up. If this is a bigger issue for you, if you feel like I need more on how to self-soothe, I have you covered. As you know, my One Love Collective, my online group on Substack, they pay $8 a month and they get all this included for every single episode, plus no ads on the podcast, plus live Q&As with me, plus all kinds of things. But if you want to join, you can, and you'll get all this. If you don't want to, though, you can pay a one-time fee of $10 and just get this therapy to go bundle. Okay. That's what I call it. It's like therapy to go. And I really recommend for anybody in my Substack or not, if you get the bundle, is to do some of the work and take it to your therapist if you have one. Talk about this with your therapist if it's really hitting home. If you're on Substack, let's talk about it in the community. Bring it to a live Q&A and let's talk about it there. Like there's lots of places we can go deeper on this. So if you're interested, this includes journaling prompts, of course. I have a 7-day self-soothing challenge. I have a find your calm triggers, like find your calm triggers, I should say, like how, find out what triggers your calm. It's sort of a guide to discovering your own personal sensory anchors. Okay. So I have like a little worksheet for that. I have self-soothing conversation scripts you'll get, and there's a self-soothing routine tracker. So you can track all this. So there's a lot if you want to get that, if it makes sense for you. If it doesn't, no worries. And I hope today gave you plenty. I always do. That's always my goal here. So if no one told you this week, you're amazing, deserving of all the good things. And I want you to always know you can count on yourself. And so I hope today was really helpful, because you really can have you. I promise. You're not, I always say it a lot. You're not broken. You can do this. It's a skill. You have to practice it. No one's born with it. So, come along and practice with us. All right. Mwah. Have an amazing week. I love and adore you. And I'll see you next week.